Summit. Today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. For those who are not familiar with Modern Sales Pros, it is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. If you're not a member yet, you'll be invited to join after the summit. Speaking of the summit, it would not be possible without our amazing sponsors like you see on the slide today. So kudos to them for making this happen. These amazing organizations are not only sponsoring this specific event, but the full 3 days and 17 total events of the summit. To learn
Wow.
more about this amazing companies, click on the sponsor booth that you see at the top of the screen and check out all the ungated, valuable resources that our sponsors have made available just for us this week. There are also some fun surprises and giveaways in those booths, so definitely check them out. And this week's summit will be full of ways to completely reimagine sales. So whether you're in sales, marketing, customer success, or product, there will be content for you. This is the second Fireside chat on our summit today with Pete Kazanji, but this time with Henry Schuck, CEO at ZoomInfo. And before we dive into the intros and content, I wanted to quickly let you know that we have so much going on, as you can see here in the agenda. We have one more coming up today, and we have a lot of full day events tomorrow. And now jumping into agenda for today. As you can see here, I'm going to go through some housekeeping notes and then pass it off to Pete for introductions. We have some great discussion and live Q&As, as well as key takeaways. So I'm going to click over here to housekeeping notes. And just to let you know, this event is being recorded. So if you have a colleague that missed it, feel free to send them the recording link. Or if you missed something while watching it, you can definitely get the recording on the MST website after the event. We'll also email it to you. Get familiar with Goldcast. There's some really cool stuff like the sponsor booth, the speaker booth, and photo booth, but definitely check that out right after the event so you can pay attention. And use the chat. We love emojis. Tell us where you're calling from, and definitely add the fire emojis and ask questions for Pete and Henry. And then, last but not least, enough about me. I'm going to pass it off to Pete Kazanji, who's moderating the event, and take it away. Pete.
Wonderful. Thanks, Angelica. Really appreciate it. Henry, what's happening? This corner office here is like really something else. It looks like something out of Billions. It looks like Bobby Axelrod.
I've really made it.
It's amazing. Cool. Well, I'm super pumped to have Henry here today. I was just kind of like, I was reflecting ahead of time on how long I've known Henry. I think it's about like 5 or 6 years now, because I think what happened was like I started MSP. And then it ended up becoming like a DiscoverOrg customer. And I remember just like somehow finding your cell phone number and texting you. I was like, oh my God, I love DiscoverOrg so much. It was just like, it is so insane. This is so amazing. Right. Anyway, yeah, I'm super pumped to have Henry here today. We're going to talk about a lot of really cool stuff. We do have some kind of like content that the ZoomInfo team put together, but also we're just going to be talking about a couple different things that are kind of like top of mind for the, for the community, the ZoomInfo company, et cetera, et cetera. Just a little bit of intro on me for folks who might not know me. My name is Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. Atrium makes, for those who don't know, we make data-driven sales management software. It's software that exists to help AE, SDR, AM, CSM managers use metrics and data to improve the performance of their team. So a different type of data than like ZoomInfo data, right? Although I guess you guys are like kind of getting into the analytics and kind of like reasoning business. So, but we're very much focused on that. How I got into sales is I started a software company called TalentBin back in 2010, where I went from being our founder, kind of a business generalist founder, to our first sales rep when we kind of realized like, hey, this stuff doesn't sell itself. What's up? Guess like someone's got to sell it, right? Our first sales manager, and then eventually our sales leader. And when we were acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. Subsequent to that, I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales that maybe a couple of you might have out there. So, and I also started Modern Sales Pros. So that's a little bit on me. Henry has a really interesting background. Obviously he's founder and CEO of originally Discover.org, which then became ZoomInfo through merger. Was that 2 years ago or 3 years ago? I feel it's like a 15-year journey at this point.
3 years ago. 3 years
right?
ago.
Like it's amazing. But obviously people are very familiar with ZoomInfo and kind of like Discover.org before that, as the end all be all of important data providers for for the go-to-market world. But prior to that, people may not know this, that Henry's a lawyer by background. Henry, maybe you can like share with folks a little bit like how you went from being like a JD to to being the CEO of a public like go to market like data orchestration and data company, because that's quite the background.
I mean, the short answer is when I ran out of tuition money in college, I went and worked for, this was 2002, 2001, 2002, was like an early entrant in the SaaS space that did something similar to what ZoomInfo and Discover.org did and do.
Nice.
And so I learned all about SaaS sales in 2001, 2002, how annual recurring revenue works, how the online platform works. And so I got a front row seat. That's 2-3 years after Salesforce was founded. So we were super, super early.
Right.
And so I got like front row seat into the business. And so when I went to law school a year in, started up Discover.org because I felt like there was this big opportunity there. And and that was how it started. So I finished law school. I passed the bar, but was really focused on running the business more than anything.
I love it. That's and very timely too, because like, hey, here's this like cloud CRM.
Yeah.
That's empty. It has no contact objects. Who are we gonna sell to here? Oh, like we need to put some things in here. Excellent. Yeah. Well, I'm super pumped for everyone to kind of get to know you better, because I'm a huge fan of yours and also of ZoomInfo. I'm a huge fan of a number of the companies that you guys have acquired. I was a huge fan of Chorus. That was acquired. Was that like a year ago at this point?
A year ago. Almost exactly a year. It might have been a year ago today, I think.
Holy mackerel, that's crazy. Time flies. I am a longtime Chorus customer. I will have you know that my Chorus, like my unique identifier for my Chorus instance, is in the teens.
Nice.
Right? So I was like, long time Chorus user there. Wonderful. So I think the first thing that we wanted to talk about a little bit here was, you guys wanted to share how you guys think about like the development and of the SDR organization at ZoomInfo, because like, I mean, you guys are in a really interesting situation, because like obviously ZoomInfo data is extraordinarily important for a lot of like business development teams, sales development teams, and what have you. But you guys also have like many hundreds of sales development staff yourself.
Yeah.
So you guys get to eat your own dog food and come up with best practices and what have you, not just around like outbound engagement and things like that, but also around like the development of that machine itself, which is of course composed by humans and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm looking forward to us kind of talking about how ZoomInfo does SDR.
Yeah, I brought a bunch of these slides because I wanted to get the points across as well as I could. And oftentimes when we practice and prep, it comes across better. So we talked about, so I wanted to talk about our SDR program. So we currently have like something like 400 SDRs who work at ZoomInfo. It might be more than that.
Oh my gosh.
We have them all around the world. We have them in Israel, where I think we have some of the first real SDR talent in Israel, because it's largely been an R&D center where the sales get done somewhere else. But we built an SDR team there in Vancouver, Washington, in Waltham, right outside of Boston, and Grand Rapids. Wow. And what we've really been able to successfully do first is we're able to hire SDRs fresh out of college into the role. And then we're also able to move these fresh out of college, or you're either fresh out of college or you've never had any sort of real sales experience. We're able to move them into an AE role within a year, into an actual selling role within a year, usually faster. And so it's a great machine. It's a talent building machine here. Important. And what we've realized is that when you promote through the organization, when those SDRs become AEs, they far outperform an outside AE that we bring in, They know the systems, they know the processes, they understand the customers. And so this is kind of how the progression works. They start on inbound, and they do that for 1 to 3 months because those are the easiest ones. Those are our hand raisers, people who filled out a form. They get acquainted with the tools and the products and the process. And then after they come out of inbound, they go into outbound in a pooled model. And so this is a round robin leads, as well as warm demos. And so warm demos are essentially, they're not hand raisers, but maybe they come to our website, they're spiking on intent. They just hired a new chief revenue officer, a VP of sales. There's enough signal that tells us, hey, this is a good enough person to go talk to now.
Yep.
So now so it's not purely cold. So they warmed up in inbound. Now they're in warm. And then when they come out of this warm pooled model, they get paired 1-to-1 with an account executive. And this is where a lot of the learning happens, right? And they do this for 2 to 5 months, where now they're going cold outbound. And they've gone through this progression, and the AE is helping them understand how to prospect properly, who the right fits are, who to ignore, who to focus on, how to perfect your pitch. They help them with follow-up appointments. Hey, we have this call. They haven't responded to me. Go set it for a follow-up. And so they're compensated both on the meeting set as well as they get a win fee too. So when the deal closes, the SDR participates as well. And so from there, and we call these SDR gold reps. These SDR gold reps, they move on all over the company. So they not just go into AE, but they also go into AM roles. They go into overlay roles. They go into CSM roles, demand gen roles. They go into product. And the thing that I thought about when I was thinking about all of their movement, and we have great career mobility at ZoomInfo, but it also makes your SDR leader responsible for more than just like the inbound team. You are the talent engine for the business. And so that requires you to go out and have a relationship with the chief product officer and the chief marketing officer and the head of the account management team and the CSMs, because these are people who are they're going to ingest your talent. And you want to create a structure that moves people up and then through the organization while you're continuing to recruit at the entry level. And so this is a great motion that we've run, now for years, but we continue to perfect.
Well, I think one of the things that ends up being really important there, I was talking about this yesterday on another Fireside chat about, it was Jeremy Donovan, right? So Jeremy Donovan, who runs sales strategy at Insight Partners now. He used to be at Sales Loft, before that at CB Insights, and did sales operations and sales strategy at GLG and Gartner. One thing that he talks about in his book, Leading Sales Development, which I absolutely love, as I think we've probably given away like 5,000 copies to various Atrium prospects and customers. He talks about the ramp performance of internally promoted SDRs versus external folks. And I think at Sales Loft, it was something like, the newly promoted SDRs would get to productivity in 3 or 4 or 5 months, whereas a external hire for the same role as a commercial AE role or mid-market AE role or whatever, the same external hires would get to productivity at 7, 8, 9 months. And so that delta is a huge thing. The
really
other thing too,
it's
crazy, right? And then the other thing too is that just being able to, it's human capital development is a form of alchemy. If you can turn lead into bronze into gold and then have a machine that does that, that's an insane capability. And so because oftentimes what ends up happening is you can't build pipeline for AEs who don't exist. This is actually sometimes organizations kind of get confused. They're just we just need to build more pipelines. If you don't have AEs who are working those ops right now, you can't just put it on the shelf, right? And so by having a capability of being able to pop out a bunch of commercial account executives on a reliable basis, I call it the pipeline above the pipeline, can be a very powerful thing. So it's super cool to see how mechanized that is at ZoomInfo.
Yeah, for us, this is a huge part of our success, is that ability to build talent through the pipeline and continue to bring people in at the entry level. And then, across the go-to-market cycle, we're using data to optimize every step. So we talked about the funnel starts at the front end with hot leads, demand gen is driving these. then these leads go directly to an inbound SDR team. That inbound SDR team has a 90-second SLA, 90-second response time SLA, which I checked, by the way. They've gotten smart. They know my Google phone number, so I have to keep changing them.
You secret shopping, right? You like, call in, fill a form, and you're like, all right, let's see.
Yep, I fill a form, and then I wait for somebody to call me, and then I let them go through the thing. It's great, and it works. They know that I'm going to test it, and so we're constantly making sure it's delivering that 90-second response time. Yep. Then we talked about our SDR teams broken out into inbound, warm, and then the outbound cold callers. The outbound cold callers, we're leveraging all of our platform data is going into Snowflake, and then we're surrounding that with a bunch of data about signals and insights that we're receiving from Chorus, signals and insights that we're receiving from, a marketing motion engagement from Marketo, and then we're prioritizing those accounts. The nice thing is that if you're in new business sales today, you do a very limited amount of prospecting here at ZoomInfo because we've built this great machine.
Mechanized it.
We mechanized it. So the SDRs are really delivering a tremendous amount of leads to the AEs. A fun thing I'll talk about, I have a slide on, is when an SDR gets a lead and then they're about to assign it to an account executive. When they're about to assign it, that lead's been scored, it's been ranked, and so we know, is it an A lead, a B lead, a C lead, or a D lead? And then our account executives are also bucketed across these lead categories, A, B, C, or D. And a lot of people, for a long time, we just round robin these, right? Lead came in, round robin. Lead came in, round robin. Next person, next person, next person. Right. And we got to a point where we're like, that's not the best way to optimize every lead that comes in. If you're trying to make the most money out of every lead that comes through your funnel, then just randomly round robining an A lead to a D player is probably not the best way to go. Now, what somebody will tell you when you have this debate is they'll say, well, if you just give all the A leads to the A players, it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it doesn't really solve your issue either. So what we've built, and I'll show in a bit, is an account executive scorecard, which basically ranks our account executives on a trailing 3-month look back. And so you can be a D, you could be in the D category and you're getting all the D leads. But if you outperform your peers in the D category, then you move up to the C category.
It's like Premier League soccer.
Yes, totally. Like Premier League soccer.
What is it like? What is it called? Like promotion and relegation or whatever. Like if you kick everyone's butt down here, it's like, cool, you're going up a league.
100%. And so
I love it.
Then if you kick everybody else's butt, you go up again. And if you underperform, by the way, if you're getting A leads and you underperform, you go into relegation, you go down a tier.
Amazing.
And it's totally transparent. Everybody sees it.
Yeah, everyone
it creates
knows.
A healthy amount of competition amongst the account executives. And it's like, it's also quieted the like, hey, it's unfair. It's like, okay, just outperform the people in that tier and then it won't be unfair anymore. They'll move up.
Here's the data. Oh, the leads are weak. No, you're getting them round robin everybody else. And here's your win rate as compared to the other 40 people in, tier B or whatever, right? That's amazing. Totally. I love it.
Yep. And so we're always we're always thinking about like what's another data point that can help us lead score better and get the right leads to the right folks. And so that's a big part of our motion.
That's funny because like I don't know. This is like one of my favorite parts about my job is like interacting with all these different sales organizations. At Atrium and then also at Modern Sales Pros. Because like I'm listening to what you guys do, and of course, like how many sellers do you guys have? Like many, like many hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like you have all that like automated, of course. Yep. We have 15 sellers at Atrium. So literally what we do is like we kind of do a similar thing, but like it's manually done. So we have like a round robin dashboard in Atrium that just like has everybody ranked by win rate in the trailing 90 days. And essentially like there's just a little bit of kind of like routing that goes on there. Nothing is like sophisticated as what you're talking about.
Totally. But most companies don't. And you start off really manually and then you automate it over time.
But I think the notion of just like using like preferential assignment predicated on performance, even if it's not mechanized, is a key thing, right? Which is like, hey, look, like shooters are going to shoot. We're going to give you the ball if you're going to shoot, right?
100%. Yep. This was a fun slide. I think you probably remember this, Pete. A long time ago, InsideSales.com used to do this thing. Yeah. They would go out, they'd fill out a form on your website, and they'd see how long it took you to respond. So that was super clever. And so we did the same thing. We went out right before a conference that I spoke at a couple of months ago. And we went out and filled out forms on everybody at that, every company at that conference. So we contacted 54 companies on their lead forms with real people at ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo is a big company. We picked the right contacts at ZoomInfo to fill out the forms with, and we saw how people responded. These are growth companies. These were all growth software companies. 54% didn't follow up on the lead at all. Just didn't do it. Zero, just no follow-up. 24%, only 24%, or 24% responded after an hour. 17% responded between 2 and 60 minutes, and less than 5% responded in under 2 minutes. Now, this is super important because if you remember the research that they did here, it showed that if you contact a lead that filled out a form on your website in an hour versus in the first few minutes, you have a 10x decrease in your likelihood to close that account.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's a huge, that's a huge issue in your business if you could optimize to just get back in under 2 minutes. This is hard. It takes real work and commitment from the entire team to make this work, but it works, and it drives a ton of efficiency in your go-to-market motion.
Yeah, I think people don't appreciate the fact that it's like, oh, well, like they raised their hand. It's like, so Kelly Wright, the president and CEO of Gong, was in a Fireside chat earlier, and she was talking about how even though we think about, and like we're talking about like operational excellence or what have you, like machines or whatever, but ultimately there's people here who are like making decisions, and like you sell to people, and people are funny, right? Like they might be they have their alternative data vendor or whatever, and like, something, they call somebody and like the phone number is wrong or whatever, like the title's off or whatever. They're like, God damn it again. I'm going to go over to ZoomInfo, right? And they like, fill the form or whatever. And like, if you don't get back to them in like a couple of hours or whatever, they're like maybe they're like less hot at that point, right? Because they're like chilled out. It's like, I was like really pissed off about like, XYZ, but like I'm okay. Versus if you get them right at that moment where they're like at peak pissed, right? Then like it's a very different conversation
with the person when they're also immediately interested in your solution. Like that's that's the best time to be interacting with them. By the way, even if you're less hot and bothered 1 hour later, you're also way more distracted. Like an hour later, your boss sent you an email, you got a Slack, you had to prepare for this thing, you're distracted, and it's not the top priority anymore. But in that moment, when it's a top priority, you got to get in front of them quickly. Now,
I love it. I love that you guys did that. I just literally like took a note to myself. I'm like, I need to refresh myself on like what our inbound SDR SLA is right now, because we had the same thing. We were like a very early customer of Inside Sales at my last software company, at TalentBin, and we had the inbound response thing, and it was true. It was like it was magic.
It works. It's not, it's most of the stuff that we do from an ops perspective is not like rocket science. It's not particularly innovative. Calling people back quickly when they fill out a form, like it doesn't take some genius to come up with that concept. It's just hard. And it's
like systematizing it at scale and like with high reliability, that's hard.
That is hard. Yes, that is hard. It isn't. It's like losing weight, right? Like how to do it, right? Eat less, exercise more. That's basically it. There's no like secret recipe. Eat less, exercise more. And if you do those things, you're going to lose weight. And like in our world too, it's like, okay, what do you have to do? Get back to your leads quickly. That as a concept is not complicated, but the work that you need to do, the discipline you need to have to get there, you just have to have a lot of discipline to get it at scale. So, we had basically a jump ball. When we started systematizing this, a lead would come in, we had 4 SDRs in a room, and then you'd go like, I got it. And that was how it worked. I got Jimmy, I got John, and then they all went to lunch and nobody got back to anybody, or, somebody went to the bathroom and the whole thing broke. So really systematizing it.
Not now with 400 SDRs, probably a lot easier now.
Yeah, you go into a queue, and then if you don't respond in the queue within 30 seconds, it takes you out of the queue and it sends it to somebody else. And so it's like,
oh my gosh,
there is magic there that happens. So this is what a rep sees when a lead comes in. And so we try to surround the lead with as much intelligence as we can. So you know how big the company is, when your last interactions with them were, what their level is, how they came to the website, what tier they're in. And so we're surrounding that lead with as much ZoomInfo intelligence as we can. So the rep is like well prepared to have those conversations. And then this is what the scorecard tracks. So it tracks trailing 3-month ACV 1, trailing 3-month win rate, trailing 3-month ASP, and trailing 3-month ACV per created opportunity. And so that's what goes into your 3-month weighted score. And then that's what rolls up into whether you move up or down one of the tiers.
Amazing. Are you guys running all that out of like Looker or Tableau, or is it being done how's that being systematized?
So all of the data goes into Snowflake, and I honestly think it comes out into Excel, and that's how they're systematizing it.
When in doubt.
Yeah, we have a go-to-market like analytics team. It's actually pretty big. It's like data scientists that are embedded in the go-to-market motion. So it's a bunch of like Harvard and Princeton and Penn grads who like went into private equity and then came into or consulting and now are running these motions for us. It's pretty amazing.
I love it.
And I wanted to, you'll like this one too, Pete. We pay a lot of attention to companies that don't show up to the meeting. So you came in, you filled out the form, you agreed to the meeting, and then you didn't show up. A lot of times that's like the end of the road for leads. But we run an automated motion and an SDR motion that goes back after every no-showed opportunity. We actually generate about $1.2 million of ACV every month by just dedicating ourselves to a demo rescheduling motion. And so basically we think about like, where is there leakage? And then how do we make sure that we're plugging the leaks that exist? And this was one that was really obvious, right? Like demo doesn't show up, like you need to go plug that leak.
Yeah, for sure. I think I haven't written anything on this, but this is definitely something where I want to like write on the topic of like really kind of like non-obvious, or like, I don't know, maybe they're obvious. I don't know. They're essentially just like it's like the lowest hanging fruit that you haven't picked, that like I would bet you dollars to donuts you have not picked this lowest hanging fruit. And so like that right there would be a phenomenal example. Another one that people don't do that just drives me bananas is resurrection motions on closed lost ops.
Totally.
Because it's crazy, right? Like we do this at Atrium because like, I mean, we have a really kind of like fun sales motion because like, we make this data-driven sales management software. It takes like 3 minutes to set up. So we get a lot of people like sales managers or SDR managers or like sales ops people who are just like, my Salesforce dashboards aren't getting it done for me. I hate this Tableau stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So they'll just like sign up for Atrium and like, we get like a 20-something% win rate off of most of our ops, which is fine, right? But like it's one of those things where the second pass over the target, once you already like, because they'll sign up for an account and we sell on customer data. And so if we have that, even if it closed loss, like that's okay. Timing might have been weird. Oh, we just like, we have a new CRO coming in. We don't want to make any decisions right now. It's like, hey, that's cool, man. Let's just put a pin in this bad boy. But like now we have this asset because we have this like, we have their data instrumented and we can like show it to them. And so making sure that you're doing a good job of looping back again in like 45 days and what have you. We have a bunch of automations around it in Salesforce, and like the SDRs pick it back up again. Importantly, it goes back to the same AE, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that the AEs are incentivized. Like we don't want them holding on to bullshit ops that aren't going to go anywhere. So like you have to make it like okay for them to close it out, knowing that it's going to come back around again to them. It's like, hey, it's okay. Just like Elsa and Frozen, you can let it go, right? Because it'll come back again. And like I'm sure there's others as well.
Do you have like a number of opportunity cap for your account executives?
Yeah, we do. We use Atrium to instrument it. So like Atrium has like goal tracking, a goal tracking capability. And so it's funny, like we have a number of ops that like we want them to be at. So like North, I think right now it's like 25 or whatever. Like you want, like Atrium will like be whining if they're under 25 ops. We also have a cap as well, where like if they go above 50, it's like, ugh, are you really working those? Are you really, and so just make it, because like it's just the fact, it's like a revenue factory, right? And like you don't want to you don't want to overload this assembly line versus this machine versus this machine. We just want to keep the whole thing smooth, rolling smoothly.
Yep, totally. I'd love to show you, like, there are a couple other, the next thing I was hoping to like poke at here is like demand gen motions, which I actually think of as like a lot more opsy than actually demand gen. And I think we do a lot of really innovative things here. And typically what you see in demand gen, I should probably watch my words. Typically what you see in demand gen, what you see in demand gen is just a lack of creativity. And like the idea that it's hard to imagine where data might exist that you can really leverage to create a really interesting motion. And I think like what we focus on is we actually bring in our best sales reps, our best account executives. And you can do this at any company. Go around the company, find your best account executives, and just ask them. Say, hey,
what are you doing? What weird stuff are you doing?
What weird stuff are you doing?
Yep.
And you would think that usually what you would find there is that it's something that can't be automated at scale, but it almost always can. So this is a great one. We acquired a company called Comparably.
Yeah.
Comparably helps companies manage their online employer brand and talk about their culture online and then reach out to their employees to create like quick surveys about their culture and then really own their brand image on the web. Because obviously candidates are going to go try to research the culture at your company before either they apply or come work for you. So Comparably has a great solution for that. So when we went to the best account executive, we asked her, like, what do you do to get people interested in Comparably? She goes, okay, so I focus on public companies. And so what I do is I go read earnings transcripts. And if the CEO talks about culture in the earnings call, I take that section where he talks about culture, I put it in an email, I send it to the SVP or CHRO, SVP of HR, CHRO, I CC the CEO, and I say, hey, culture is obviously important to you guys. And I was reading your earnings transcript where CEO talked about culture. We help companies get their culture message out on the web so that it increases conversion of their candidate. You would hear that and you'd go like, okay, great. Like if you have unlimited time and perfect data, that's a fantastic way to run a demand gen motion. Like kudos. But we looked at it and went like, I bet
who's got time for that, right?
Yeah. Who's got time for that? But I think when we looked at it and we went, okay, I'm pretty sure we can automate this. So we went through, we crawled all the earnings transcripts of public companies for the last 6 months. We looked for culture and CEO. We pulled out the snippet where the CEO talked about culture. We actually have a data ops team, a data analyst team that kind of cleaned up stuff, looked for like mistakes. Turns out there are a bunch of biology companies who talk about cultures and biological cultures. So like it's a technical thing. So we had to pull those out. That didn't take much. Then we had a perfect data set and we sent this out and it was one of our top performing campaigns.
I can only imagine.
It's a great campaign. And it's one-to-one personalization, right? Like it's really specifically personalized. People felt really good about getting that message. This is an easier one where, technographics are a great way to personalize a message, but particularly if you can marry them to the persona at the company who owns that technology. And so in ZoomInfo, when people install or uninstall technologies, it's just a field that you can track inside of ZoomInfo. And so you could say, show me all the companies that installed Ringlead or uninstalled, Demand Base or 6 Sense or Gong or whatever it is. So you can look at install and uninstall data, and then you can run a motion behind it. So Well, we're able to look at people who install or uninstall technologies and then automate a motion behind those companies where we marry that technology to the ops or to the right persona at that company who owns that technology. And we run a campaign behind them.
Yeah, because frequently what'll end up happening is like the different personas in the organization will have different perspectives around like a given competitor technology and around like value propositions or deficits or whatever, where like, hey, like, yeah, use us as an example. We actually don't do this around technographics. We do this more around like new people who have newly joined. So like we have a play around like a new sales operations hire that just joins an organization. This is like a down market thing. So it's like usually SMB organization. You got like 10 or 20, AEs or something like that. But what we'll do is we have different personas with different multi-threading, right? So it's like, hey, Mr. and Ms. Sales Operations person, that's how you just joined. You're probably like busier than like a one-legged kickboxer, and you probably have a bunch of tech debt to clean up. But you, at the same time, you probably have a bunch of managers and leaders like asking you for reports and dashboards and like you ain't got time for that, Atrium value proposition right here. And then we do the same thing to the managers, like, hey, saw you just got a new RevOps person. I bet you're probably happier than a kid at Christmas. Here's the reality. Like they probably got hired in order to implement CPQ or whatever. And so you probably have a list a mile long, and here's how, Atrium can kind of help you accelerate some of those things. But it's like persona specific, but then off of a trigger. But in that case, it's like, it's personalized and relevant, even though it's not like, hey Henry, I saw that you went to the Ohio State University or whatever. It's like that's just like labor intensive and stupid, as opposed to like, something that it like targeted, really hits them in the hits them in the feels, right?
Yep. And we actually, so on that use case, we actually have in ZoomInfo built a workflow tool that lets you do just that. So I can say, hey, across these 1,000 accounts, if there's a new VP sales, VP RevOps, chief marketing officer, whatever it is, then I want to capture these people and I want to put them into this sequence. Or I want to capture these people and I want to put them into this marketing automation campaign, or I want to kick off display ads against them or Facebook ads against them, or really simply, I just want to notify the rep. This account has a new chief revenue officer. And by the way, if you go across your company, there's probably 20 of these that are really valuable and important. Hires a new head of RevOps, opens a new location, adds a new technology, whatever it is, has a spending initiative on X, Y, or Z, is increasing spend on, or is spiking on intent for our products and services. And what you really want is a machine that's finding those signals and then running an automated campaign for you. Exactly. And so what we've built inside of ZoomInfo that's native, and so anyone who's a ZoomInfo customer here can go test this out. You can create that trigger that you want, that insight that you want, marry it to the accounts that you want, marry that to the people at the accounts that you want, and then run an action based on that. And that action can be inside your sales automation system. It could be inside your marketing automation system. It could be inside a display ad or social media display for marketers for display ads too. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think this is what's really fun about what you guys do, and I think you guys have your labs team that kind of like is constantly kind of like goofing around and kind of like figuring out like the craziest kind of like recipes you guys can do, and then that probably drives like product development. Because 100%. I'll give you an example. I like my SDR team is gonna be mad at me for like giving away this gem here, but so like a really kind of key use case for Atrium is tracking the successful ramp of reps, right? You got a new SDR, set of new SDRs that are hired, set of new AEs that are hired. Like it's really important to make sure that they're like the leading indicators of their performance, like their activity levels, their op inflow, all those sort of things are coming into band from a ramping standpoint. Okay, cool. So as a result, what our SDR team wants to do is engage organizations that have had like recent hires. Right. Okay. Cool. Like, yeah, we could do that. But and so what's really fascinating though, and unfortunately, this like data platforms can't provide this. So we have like an offshore squad, doing this right now. Like has an amazingly high open rate for an outbound email to an SDR manager, an AE manager. The name of a new hire.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I bet it does.
Yeah. So what you do is you go outbound and you have the name of a recent hire in there, going to like the leader of the organization. And this kind of gets like a little diffuse as you get like larger, but of course, like now that like that email is getting open, no problem, right?
Yeah,
And it's
totally.
like, hey, saw that you hired Henry recently. Looks like a super awesome rock star. Hey, one of the things that my boss has new hires do is read this book right here on sales development leadership, or sales management coaching or whatever. I'd love to send you a copy and maybe like share a little bit about like how Atrium helps you with the ramp of monitoring the successful ramp of new AEs or whatever. Huge open rate, huge response rate. It just crushes. Now the data has to be like manually, not by our SDR team, right? But it has to be like prepared in a way. But then like now that like once you have those like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rows of of like the target, and of course like the humans who are in the organization, well then you just run it through your sales engagement solution and you're like good to go.
Yep. No, that's a great motion. And I think like that is the thing. Like we should be thinking creatively about motions that feel very personalized, but then thinking like, okay, how do we run this at scale?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's like the whole game.
And then I think with you guys, in you guys' case, like you see enough of these, and then you're like, man, how could we like make that a data facet on like the account object or on the contact object or something?
Right? Yeah, exactly. So we have actually thousands of attributes, company attributes that go beyond just like what, go beyond their industry or their growth rate or whatever. But it goes as deep as like how many cars are in their fleet, or do they offer unlimited PTO? Do they offer tuition reimbursement or training reimbursement? So like if I'm a online training company or online school, I can target companies that do that provide training reimbursement. So there are tens of thousands of key company attributes that you can pull into any of these messages, and they've just been built all over the years off of things that people are like, you know what, it would be really great if I can include this key thing inside of my campaign. It's like, great, well, we'll go collect that and we'll make the engine just collect it constantly over time.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges it's like a weird champagne problem, but you get to the point where there's so many attributes.
Yep.
Right. And I think this is what you were kind of saying earlier, is like you can have a failure of creativity, where if people don't know like what's in the cupboard, right? Like what's in like what's in the kitchen, like what they can do there. And I think that there's also people like, people live like a year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years in the past, where they're just like, they have these like they're unaware of the limitations. Like, oh yeah, well, like, ZoomInfo, it just has title and
name and
title. Yeah, name and title and the size of the company, right? And like how much funding they have or whatever. It's like, no. So I think one thing that organizations probably need to do a better job around is like knowing how to use that data in a more effective fashion. And I think it's funny because it's like, it's not historically it's not historically a RevOps capability. It's not historically a marketing ops capability, like, kind of being this like data alchemist or whatever. And obviously this is really important for you guys' business, because like the more data alchemists there are, the more that they're going to like be using you guys as ingredients, right? So how do you guys like help facilitate that to like, help people know how crazy they can get?
Yeah. So I think a couple ways. One, you can explore these. And so you can just kind of like play around in these attributes. We have when you onboard, which I think I had a slide there that showed it, but when you onboard, you have a dedicated onboarding manager that walks you through sort of all of these different types of company attributes that you can leverage in your motions. And then really it's up to you to kind of start thinking about these things, right? And our account managers and solution salespeople can help you find proxies for things, for example.
Right.
So like, I want to know a company, I want to know fast growing companies. Okay, well, one way is to look at
this.
Yeah. And one way is to just look at growth. But another way, if you're like looking at software companies, is when a company hires their first CFO, or hires the first chief customer officer, or the first person in customer success, like that's a company that's growing and being successful and investing. And so there's a great proxy for it. Or, I want to know when companies are sophisticating their financial processes. Well, a great proxy for that is when a company is migrating from QuickBooks to NetSuite. We have that.
Right.
So we can show you when
uninstall QuickBooks, install NetSuite.
So NetSuite,
okay,
that's a sophisticating company. Yeah. And so thinking about what a proxy for your thing might be, or for whatever the key indicator might be, is also a pretty cool way to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I think, helping folks understand this is something that like we run into from a customer success standpoint as well, because oftentimes people will think that they they want to ask a certain question about the performance of a rep or the performance about a team or whatever, and then they kind of think about, they're like, oh well, like I think it might be win rate by like this or whatever, and it actually they might be thinking about it like wrong, and being like, hey actually, here's another way to think about that, to kind of like to skin that cat. Totally. And this is something that we have to push on our customer success team to do, is to be like, hey, well, like what we call it, the question under the question. Like, what's the question under the question? Like, what are we trying to achieve right here? Oh, okay, we're trying to implement this round robin situation. That's why I was really focused on like win rate by XYZ. Oh, got it. Well, here, let us show you all the different ways that people use data and metrics in order to like drive a successful round robin motion. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Right. Like, but you have to like go, it's kind of like discovery, right? Like we call it discovery.
Like discovery. And like, I think what happens is, I tell our sales team all the time, like, if you're not being persuasive and consultative on a call, then I'll just record a demo. Like, what do I need you for? I'll just record a demo of me showing the thing. Like, your job is to be persuasive, to align the solution with their pain, to be consultative in those moments. And like, that's how that is how you distinguish
selling.
Yourself. That is selling. Yeah. That
selling.
Is selling. Yeah.
So helping people understand, like, I'm trying to get this datum right here. It's like, oh, I hear what you're doing, but like, how about these 4 over here?
Right. Why don't we just do it? Do a shortcut it this way. It gets you even a better result. This is a fun one that you can do. You can do, but basically, you can customize an image. And so
oh my God,
we want to show people what Chorus looks like. So Chorus is our conversation intelligence platform. It records, analyzes, and transcribes calls, and it shows you key moments in those calls. It gives you anomalies that are happening in your deal cycle so that you can forecast better. It gives you a real view into the customer voice. Well, I want, when I'm prospecting to a company that doesn't have conversation intelligence, I want them to be able to imagine the power of conversation intelligence. Well, one of the great ways to do that is to actually take an image of the Chorus platform and then include key, and then in the mentions column. So what were the key things that were mentioned? Put in keywords or competitors of the company. And so competitors aren't that hard. You can just get that from ZoomInfo. Keywords are interesting. And the way that we do that is we actually go out and then we're tracking sort of what key terms the company's bidding on. And then we're including that. And so now you can, when you're looking at a view of Chorus, you see like mentions, competitors, mentions, key areas of key data points that you're buying ads against. And it's really specific to your audience. And then once we collect these keywords, we add them as attributes into ZoomInfo. So then you can start leveraging that across the 100 million companies that we profile.
I love it. Yeah, these are some like definitely like double black diamond kind of like data driven data-driven outbound motions that like really drive personalization. And it's funny, like, yeah, personalization, but also like relevance at scale.
Yeah,
relevance at scale.
And a way to stand out at scale, right? Like everybody is running a very similar motion, targeting the same kind of 5,000, 10,000 companies. And, our job is to make sure that when, number one, we're targeting them at the right time. And so what signals are we using? At ZoomInfo, I talk a lot about, look, if they visited your website, 100 people visit your website today, 1 or 2 of them will fill out a form. What happened to the other 98, 99 people? So having some kind of website visitor identification built into your site so you can de-anonymize those companies and then connect them to the persona, run an automated motion when they come to your site. There's no better, there's no better indication of interest in Atrium or ZoomInfo than a company visiting your website. After that, I think about intent data, what companies are researching your products and services or your competitors right now on the web, which ones are spiking in their research for that. You need to be in front of those companies. Maybe they never came to your website, but if they're out there doing research on your products or services, you should be making sure you're getting in front of them. And then we have a product that's called Scoops, where we actually go out and inside of ZoomInfo, we actually go out, we survey folks, and we ask them what sort of projects and initiatives are you working on over the next 6 to 12 months. And we give them a $10 Amazon gift card, and they tell us what projects and initiatives they're working on that we publish in the platform. And so you can go in there and say, like, show me the companies that are spending money on accounts payable automation or CPQ or whatever, the HVAC, whatever the product or service might be. And so now I've got these 3 key indicators, key insights that narrow my market, right? Instead of trying to go out and target 100,000 companies every week, I can target the 200 that are showing some kind of signal or intent for my products or services.
And then I think one of the things that ends up being really powerful there is, it's like it's relevance at scale. And so relevance can be a variety of different things. It can be like a timing based, it can be like a persona based relevance, or like a context based relevance. Like we were kind of talking about, like, oh, you just hired this new SDR, like these set of SDRs, like, Atrium can help you track their successful ramp or what have you. The other thing too is that if you think, this is something that we do quite a bit around like offers, because it takes like 3 minutes to set up an Atrium account. One of the things that we do is like, we know that if we can get somebody to turn on an Atrium account, to show them the data for their, their SDR team, their AE team, their AM CSM team, or what have you, you're going to have these like very muscular aha moments. So like once we like turn on data, the win rate goes up very, very, very substantially. So what you can do is you can kind of like ratchet up the value of the offer if it looks like if it's really, really a hot lead, right? So as an example here, versus, just going outbound to the entire world and being like, who wants some AirPods or whatever, versus showing up to somebody who like has a ZoomInfo scoop or has like some sort of like something that indicates that like they're really worth kind of like going out to them and saying like, hey, would you like a copy of this book? Or like, would you like a Yeti or what have you? That like, rather than like spraying that across everybody, and then you end up with like a bunch of like tire kickers. They're like, I'd like a Yeti, sounds good to me, right? If you're only focusing on the ones who are really like ready to rock,
more than happy to give them a Yeti or whatever you want.
All day long, right? All day long, right? But like you have to have that, that good contextual data in order to understand that like it's worth it, right? That they're worth it.
Exactly. Yep.
The data orchestration thing?
I was going to say, if you want to see the rest of our plays, or you want to see some of our best plays, you can go to zoominfo.com/MSP.
These are great.
Fill out that form, and then we'll give you sort of all of the plays. And some are like much less sophisticated than the ones I laid out here, but like you can move up the sophistication ladder.
Well, you can get like inspired, right? It's like reading through like a recipe book, right? Like, kind of flipping through Gourmet magazine, like, I'm not going to make that one, but you know what? I could make a more basic version of that one.
Here and a little bit from that. Oh, it turns out I can use this over here. So we'd love to share that with everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think, Henry, you also wanted, like, one of the things we wanted to cover was like this notion of like, how do you centralize a data best practice, or like a data orchestration center of excellence? Because it's like not really something that people have historically done very well. How have you guys seen your customers doing that successfully?
Yeah, I mean, we don't see a lot of people build a centralized data practice, right? And this is kind of like how you'd say ours looks. And so it starts with sort of this, obviously the tech stack at the bottom, but first on the far left, targeting and account intel. So we have a team of analysts and analytic talent that we talked about who are helping us sort of prioritize accounts and understand sort of which accounts we should be going after. Playbook design. This is like we bring in executives, account managers, rev gen people, SDRs, and they contribute to the playbooks. Like, what is the play we're going to run? So this is where you get all the clever ideas that you can go create motions around. Then we have data pipelines. So these data pipelines, they all flow into a data lake, but it's ZoomInfo data, Salesforce data, our marketing automation data, our sales automation data, they all go into this central repository where they all come together. And so there are engineers who help you pipe and route and cleanse that. One of our visions, Pete, with ZoomInfo is to take that complexity away. So if you look at one of the plays you can run into ZoomInfo today with our conversation intelligence solution is show me all the calls in the last 6 months where a competitor was mentioned and the deal was closed, lost.
Right.
Great. Now I have that audience and I can say, show me all of the chief marketing officers, the VPs of sales, the SVPs.
Whatever,
And then I can go run a motion behind that. And I can automate that in real so that it's just constantly running.
Yeah.
Today, or before this was built into ZoomInfo with Chorus data, what we had to do was take all of our data out through API, put it into Snowflake, marry it to Salesforce data, so do matching in there, marry it to ZoomInfo data to find the personas we wanted to target, then pull all of that data back out, put it in our marketing automation system, put it in our Salesforce system, load up a campaign and run it. That's who's
like a week.
Yeah.
There's a lot of you look up there.
How to VLOOKUP there. And so what you're able to do today inside of ZoomInfo is just, that's all built into the platform. Show me the companies, marry to my Salesforce, my HubSpot data, run the motion. Marry to ZoomInfo data, run the motion. And so our vision is to bring sort of all of these kind of processes that take a lot of people glue, a lot of systems, some engineers, and give it to you in a simple interface that really levels up everybody's ability in sales to go to market in a unique and personalized way. It's what everybody wants, but it's so hard to pull together because you have 7 different systems and it's all got to go into one system and then come back out. And so that's really what we're building inside of ZoomInfo.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why when I first kind of came across DiscoverOrg, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Because at my last software company, TalentBin, we had this gentleman who was an SDR who moved into sales operations, a dude named Manny Ortega. And we would essentially do a quarterly data ops refresh, right? Where I think we had a dozen offshore, because we were selling recruiting solutions. So we had a dozen, and this is a decade ago. This is how old I am. We had a dozen offshore resources that we're using. I think we had a couple seats of LinkedIn Recruiter, and they were just pulling things off of there and enriching and and then but it was cadenced on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
Right. Because you couldn't have the CRM just all right, we did it and leave it there for a year because the data was decaying,
right.
Whatever it is, 3% a month or whatever. And so then when Manny was early the sales operations leader at Outreach, they actually got it. He took that and took it to 11, kind of Spinal Tap, and was using a bunch of different data providers and marrying them together, and then doing that sort of same TAM enrichment on a recurring basis. But it was him, and I think he had 2 baby analysts kind of helping him out and what have you. But it's just you have to have really thoughtful, historically you had to have nerds Manny and me to a lesser extent and what have you. And so if you can just abstract that away, that can be a very a very powerful thing, right? So the normal human beings can enjoy the fruits.
Should be able software. This area of software has been historically underinvested in, right? They spent all their money on engineers. All of the investment money went into Jira and CrowdStrike and Datadog and software tools and developer tools and DevOps tools. And no one was investing in the sales organization, the sales ops organization. There's a handful of us, but if you step outside of sales and you go into IT or the engineering world, there's a ton more investment going into making the engineer's job really, really easy, really not easy, but much easier.
Well, take away the fussy crap.
Take away the fussy crap. Yep.
Continuous. Yeah, exactly. Actually, that's a really good metaphor. If you think about a modern software development lifecycle implementation, continuous integration with builds that are automatically being done, that are being deployed onto VMs, maybe got feature flagging going, et cetera, et cetera. This whole kind of automated thing. And then, we got us over in the sales organization, banging rocks together, taking profile objects off of LinkedIn Sales Navigator or off of Crunchbase or whatever, versus just, and then doing our manual alchemy versus like, hey, let's just like, what's the CI? What's the continuous integration version of this?
Of what we're doing. And that's the future world of how companies will go to market. And that's what we're totally focused on.
Wonderful. Well, Henry, we chewed up all of our time. This was absolutely fantastic. Thank you and your team for putting together all those really awesome slides. I think people probably pulled away some pretty rad ideas. I mean, I know I pulled away the like, hey, yeah, duh, like get in contact with your inbound leads, WTF. Literally, it's on my Post-it note in front of me right now. I'm like, hey, what is our inbound SLA right now? Like, I need to refresh myself. So thank you very much for that. Angelica, you want to tell folks what they should be expecting next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pete and Henry, for your time today. Up next, all aboard the CRO train from 0 to 100 mil in revenue is happening right now. So we'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, these guys are awesome. Have fun, guys.